Hey there. Hey there, Emma. I wanted to take just a couple of minutes here to talk to you about your job description. Overall, outstanding. There were very, very few things in terms of the clarity of thought and the content that I had issues with. Just a little bit here and there that you might do to improve that. First of all, if you haven't looked at the two files that I've attached with this video to your grading screen, please do that. Specifically, the document file, the Word document, where I took the job description that you gave me, updated a little bit in terms of format, added a couple of sentences here and there, changed a word or two here and there, and then renamed it and sent it back. I'd like for you to find the original file that you send me and delete it so that it no longer exists, and then work from that file going forward. You'll also want to probably print the PDF file, which is the file I printed that you sent me with all of my notes and comments and things like that. As I talk through this video, some of the little scribblings and things that I put out there in the margins, it will make more sense if you're looking at it while I'm talking about it. And with that said, let me tell you that the purpose of this particular assignment was partially to get you accustomed to thinking about a job and creating a job description, but also to get you thinking both in terms of the HR person who's looking for a candidate and also from the candidate's perspective, trying to find information to know whether I want to apply for this job or not. So a lot of job descriptions that you will see in the real world won't have a lot of the job context stuff. But again, I want you to be thinking from the candidate's side about the questions that they're going to have to decide whether to interview or not. So this provides, as it says, the context of the job to know whether you want to apply or not. With all that said, first of all, the job summary I thought you did very well on. It takes the essential functions and it boils it down to a couple of key ideas. The idea being that if I'm not sure if I want to interview for this installation coordinator job or not, I can read that summary and have a pretty good idea whether it's interesting to me or not. And if it's not, I don't have to waste my time reading the rest of the job description. If it is, I'm going to keep reading forward. You did a very good job picking up the highlights of that. Moving to the essential functions, your vision of the installation coordinator sounds like a very good one, and you've summarized that quite well in your essential functions. I added a line at the front about reasonable accommodations, and then I changed a little bit in terms of putting an S on the end of the verbs or removing the S. I expanded on the performs other duties. So far with the job summary and the essential functions, there's nothing that I really think that you need to change, but I would ask you to, now that a couple of days have gone by since you submitted the original, that you go back and you read it from the perspective of a candidate and see if there's anything that is lacking that you might want to add in a little bit here now. Moving into the job context, each one of those things is designed to answer a very specific question that a candidate might have. The first one supervision received is, who do I report to? At least what's the title of the person that I report to? If I were looking at an organizational chart, I could find my box for installation coordinator. Who's in the box above me? And what you've done has told me exactly what it is that I'm looking for. You've told me that I will report to the customer service manager. You might add a little bit to that to indicate whether the customer service manager will be on site with you just down the hall or across the building or something, or whether that person will be in a different building somewhere else. That's important for me to know. Will I just walk down the hall if I have a question, or do I need to pick up the phone and call somebody? You've indicated that they're going to fulfill certain roles, which is great. And when you can't reach that person in their office, you can contact her from phone. But again, you might want to say that is that office in your building or not. But good job overall. A little tweak and you've probably got that perfect. Available guidelines is also on track. That answers the question. I don't want to go to my boss every time I have a question. I'm going to feel stupid. I'm going to bug them. And they may start wondering whether they've made a good decision in hiring me. What other resources can I turn to so that I don't have to bother somebody? And what you've given me is a pretty good information. Again, you might want to tweak this some. Most places will have reference manuals and employee handbooks and policies and procedures manuals in 3-ring binders. A lot of them will have intranet sites that you can log into and query something and come up with an answer. And available guidelines is where you would put that kind of stuff. It's basically the concept because we know you don't want to be bothering your coworkers and your boss a lot. We've created these references that can answer most of your questions, and here they are. We have an employee handbook. We have that helps you with these things. We have a personnel website which helps you with these things. We have a policies and procedures manual that tells you step by step how we do things and what we can say yes to and no to, and those kinds of things. That's what I'd really like to see you develop the available guidelines into. What you've got is a really good start, but spell out some of those tools that they have available. All right. Accountability, consequence of error, I think you also did a very good job on. When you look back over the essential functions, a question that a candidate might have is, where have you seen in the past where folks have struggled, and what kind of a deal is it? Is it a big deal if something goes wrong? What could potentially happen? So you might, in that section, you've talked a little bit about accurate records and communication and things like that. You might add in a little bit more specifically about how it have an impact on the company's performance. These kinds of things, if we install something wrong because of poor communication, we may have to refund money to the customer or whatever. That's a financial impact. If we do a very poor job or we don't do what we say we're going to do, it may create a bad taste in their mouth, and bad news spreads quickly. It could tarnish our company image, those kinds of things. And a lot of this is worst case scenario, but to give them a framework within which to work. Maybe even if I consistently make problems that I should be able to address, but I don't, there's some disciplinary actions, maybe some termination or something. That's what we're looking for in terms of the accountability and the consequence of error. So like so many of these other things, read back over it and see if you want to tweak it a little bit, add a few words, clarify some ideas. Under personal contacts, again, who do I interact with on a regular basis? Am I in an office not ever talking to anybody, or do I talk on the phone or see people? You've indicated the people, and for the most part, I think, the frequencies, daily basis, after a purchase is made once a week, so forth. Be very specific with, especially with the ICs at the other locations, how frequently you're going to talk to them. Um, are there any other kinds of people, categories of people that you might interact with? Maybe you'll interact with vendors to check on the status of deliveries, or you'll interact with other departments, accounting or the warehouse or marketing or something like that, so that you have an idea of how to plan your day. Think about all of the different kinds of things that you could impact sorry, that was my cell phone, and list those in there. Supervision exercised. The next question is, do I ever get to be the boss of anybody? And for most of these jobs, as entry-level jobs, the answer is no, not right away. But you could build in that, maybe eventually, as you grow in this position and learn more, that we would turn to you for expertise. Maybe you're going to help train new employees at some point in the future, or you're going to be a part of a consulting group that helps us make decisions, and you're going to supervise ideas more so than people. You might consider putting something like that in your supervision exercise. Physical demands, what kind of a toll is this going to take on my body? You've talked about lifting a minimum of 10 pounds. You might add something that typically that's carrying something across the office, or that's carrying something across the warehouse. How long do I have to carry this 10 pounds? How far? You might want to talk about how much you'll be sitting or standing, or things like that. But you've done a pretty good job with the physical demands as well. Work hazards, it's probably a given that we're going to comply with OSHA standards, because that's expected in no matter what industry you're in. But there are other hazards potentially. What's the probability that you'll have angry customers who are going to be yelling at you, creating stress? That's kind of a hazard. What are the hazards in terms of maybe working in a hot warehouse or something, and how that could have an impact on your body? That might be part of the personal demands as well in terms of the working conditions. But you might say that there are no significant hazards, but there's some minor things. You see the TV commercials of the drugs, and they say possible side effects, and they list off this bunch of things that are never going to happen, but we're at least going to say we recognize that little things happen from time to time. So if you think that could fit into the category of hazards, you might want to spell out some of those other things. And in terms of our premises, what did you mean by that? The physical grounds, or the office environment, or whatever. The personal demands in letter number H, the answer is trying to get to the question, how's this going to impact everything outside of work, my family, my time, my schedule, my calendar, those kinds of things. So you've addressed requires the ability, weekends, weekdays, holidays, maybe overtime, but you say as requested, you might want to say typically it's, once a month, or it's very infrequent or something, so that I get a framework. As requested, you could request it every day, or you could request it twice a week or whatever. Clarify that a little bit more. Personal demands, you might also talk about whether or not you're going to have to travel. As the installation coordinator, probably not, but occasionally you might go out to a site with one of the installers to kind of watch what they do, and you might have to go out ahead of time and look at the things, the situation, to be able to plan the installers. So talk about the kinds of travel. Is it day travel? Is it overnight travel? What is it more often than not? Those are personal demands, okay? So good job overall there. Knowledge, skills, abilities, again, pretty good. Go back to the essential functions and say, what specific knowledge do I have to have in order to do this? What abilities do I need to have? Prioritizing time, certainly interacting with people, communicating, those kinds of things. A lot of that you've addressed. What skills do I need to be able to do these things? You've done a pretty good job with what you've got. I've just made some very minor kinds of things, or at least noted them on this sheet. I don't remember whether I changed all of this stuff. But where I've got words crossed out throughout this document, you might go in and eliminate those words. 5 to 10 other characteristics, you might eliminate the 5 to 10 if I didn't do that. I don't remember, I was getting in a hurry. And then minimum qualifications, again, very good. At least a high school diploma or the equivalent. There's a requirement. Preference is associate's or bachelor's degree or the equivalent thereof. Remember, in the real life, that's probably true, but in this particular case for this exercise, you're interviewing college sophomores and they won't have a bachelor's degree. So you might say, at least for the purpose of this assignment, associate's degree or the credit hour equivalent of that. Experience, none is required. Preferences given to those with experience. Define that. Is that 3 months experience? Is it a year or more? Whatever. It would help if as a candidate, if I know that preference is for 2 years and I've got one, well, I've got some of what you're looking for, but not fully. And then I've added a little bit at the bottom, which you don't need to do anything with other than to notice that it's there. As you go through here and look at this with a clean set of eyes, a couple of days removed from having submitted it, think about it from the client, the candidate's perspective, and make little tweaks here and there to address things that they might have a concern or an uncertainty about. Otherwise, outstanding job with it. When you make any corrections, email me back the file and make sure that you're using the one that's attached to this assignment feedback page rather than the original one that you sent me, because you'll have the formatting right. You'll have all of my changes already built in there. The likelihood is that once you send it back to me, you're done. I'm probably not going to send it back for any other part changes on your part, although I may tweak a little bit what you give me. If you have questions, give me a call or send me an email. Otherwise, congratulations on a job. Very well done. And I hope that the next stage is smooth. If I get it back from you Thursday late afternoon, I can give it to my IT guy who can load it Friday, and we can start letting communication students see these things. We won't turn it loose to them until everybody from our class is finished. So, if you're the last one, you're holding up everybody else. If they're the last one, they're holding you up. But holler at me if you have a question. Looking forward to what you turn in as a final product.